Okay, so now that we have our color wheel illustrated, one more item that I wanted to discuss was the palette. We need to put our paints in a palette. So this is ideal if you find a palette with about 10 or 12 wells. The local dollar store also had this. They only have 6 wells, but the nice thing about this package is that there's 6 pieces in it. So there's 6 of these. So realistically, you have 6 times the 6 wells. And you guys should have 2 wells each, so you can separate them now. Just pop them apart, because you're going to be using all of them. Okay, so those joining me in class today, you guys should be able to separate yours into 2. Okay, you should have 12 wells altogether. So when you're mixing your colors, you're going to need a new well every single time. That's why one of these isn't sufficient. Otherwise, you're going to be running to the sink nonstop to rinse. Okay, or again, if you guys can find something that is, it's ideal. Also, you can even trace it to make your circle if you do have something like that. Okay, so for the first things first, you're going to get your tubed paints out. You guys are sharing sets, so please make sure to just carefully open them and remove the plastic cover. So these are the ones that I usually order. They're student grade, artist quality tubed watercolor paints that I order from Curry's Art Store. You don't have to go to Curry's for yours because, like I said, Michael's and Walmart have great art supplies, including similar supplies, just different brand names, okay? And it's just got a plastic cover on it, so take that off. The plastic goes into the garbage. There's a garbage in the center of the room if you guys want to just pop it in. So the set that I bought at Walmart is very similar to the one that I've been buying for students to date. I found this one, North Shore. There's also one more brand at Walmart that's pretty good, and it's got 12 colors and tubes as well. And I've used both, and they're pretty much the same. I almost like the less expensive ones more. Michael's has fairly inexpensive value packs of watercolor as well, okay? But this is what I mean by tubed watercolor. So regardless what you continue to use, all of the brands seem to be pretty good, okay? So I'm going to pull out my primary colors because that's the only colors that I want to work with today. So you'll notice that there is 2 different yellows, 2 different reds, and 2 different blues. We want to choose something that's as close as possible to primary red, primary yellow, and primary blue. Okay, out of the 2 blues, there is a phthalo blue. It starts with a PH. This one here pulls on more of a turquoise base, on more of like a green cool undertone. So I would avoid using this one. Okay, I would go for the ultramarine blue. This one here is more of a true primary blue, kind of smack in the middle between warm and cool. So it mixes nicely to create both green blue colors and violets. Okay, so we want to go for the ultramarine. Next, we have 2 reds. The brilliant red pulls on more of an orange red. Okay. We want to go for the crimson red. I find that the crimson red works better as a primary red. And out of the 2 yellows, to be honest, it doesn't really matter. The lemon yellow is brighter, so it's more intense, and the medium yellow is more neutral, if you will, okay? So if you want, you can go for the medium yellow, but if you accidentally use the lemon yellow, it's not the end of the world. It's just a touch brighter. Okay, so these are the only colors that you're going to be having out. And everyone is investing in their own set by tomorrow. For today, again, if you're joining me in class, you have the pleasure of using what I've left out for you guys. Okay, when you start using your watercolors, they might have been sitting in the warehouse for a while. So sometimes the water in the tube and the pigment in the tube separate. So when you open it and you squeeze it, a lot of the water pours out. It's almost like a filmy water. You don't want that to happen because it's going to make your watercolor dry. So before you open it, I just like to give the tube a little massage. Just kind of squish it back and forth just so that paint or the pigment mixes with the water in there again, okay? And you can do that to all 3 primary colors. You don't have to do this when you're using acrylics, but with watercolor, like I said, sometimes you don't know how long it's been sitting in the warehouse, 6 months, 2 months, maybe a year, right? So separation happens. Okay, so next thing's going to be let's start with the red, okay? So you can open it up. If you bought the pack from Walmart, you'll notice that there's a little aluminum cover, and the tops of the lids have a sharp point on them. Okay, if you could see here, and you can actually pierce the paint. Okay, so this is the Walmart brand that I was using. When you open it, they're sealed, and it's almost like crazy glue. The lid has a little sharp tool, so you poke it in like that, and it should open it up for you. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and squeeze just a touch of this into our well because it's going to be mixed with water. I compare it to about like the size of your pinky nail, no larger. You can always squeeze more paint out. You can never put the paint back into the tube. And if you buy an individual color of watercolor, sometimes you're paying $15 to $20 just for a single tube, right? So we have the value pack. We don't want any of these colors to necessarily run dry. Okay, so like kind of a nail size dollop is enough. Okay, let's bounce over to 2 wells over, and we're gonna do the yellow. Squeeze out some yellow. And on the furthest end of our well, let's squeeze out some blue. Okay, so what do we know about primary colors? We know that these 3 colors make up all of the other colors on the color wheel, and we know that they're evenly spaced apart. So we have 12 spaces here. We can choose any given space to start with because the wheel can turn, right? The wheel can turn. It doesn't matter where we decide to put a red. The more important part is that the red is sitting beside the correct colors. So we're going to take our paintbrush, and because this is watercolor, we want to add some water to our paintbrush. Okay, so pick up some water with your paintbrush and bring it into the red. Okay, I'm going to do one more. So never use watercolor without adding water to them. They're not meant to use without. I might even do one more. Okay, and again, I can start anywhere I want. So I'm going to go to the top of my circle here. 2 things are happening right now. A, you're going to feel how watercolor feels coming off the brush, and 2, you're going to practice using a flat brush if you've never used one before. So you can go in and you can block areas in by using it the wide way. You can move it sideways like this to get a nice crisp edge to your circle, and then bring the paint in. You can also move the circle sideways and use the brush sideways to get nice, crisp, smaller lines. That will help you get into the crevice here. Okay, so your goal is to block in this triangle of red color and make it nice and consistent, meaning even color throughout. And right away you can feel how nice watercolor paper is because it's designed to absorb the paint as you're working with it. If you were doing this on a regular sheet of computer paper, it would get really wet and soggy, okay? If you find that it's not stretching enough, rather than adding more paint, sometimes it's worth just dabbing your brush back into the water and bringing some water onto your page. Okay, so sometimes a little bit of water goes far rather than adding more paint to your page. Keel, if I could get you to sit over here just because you're going to have access to the paints. Okay, so when your triangle is covered, you're going to rinse your brush really well. And then you're gonna dab it off on your paper towel. This brown paper towel is really not great at absorbing, but it's better than nothing. If you have Bounty at home or something more absorbent, it might work better. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is figure out where our yellow is going to go. We need equally separated primary colors, right? So if this is 1, we're going to do every 4th, right? So if we have red here, 1, 2, 3 empties, and we do yellow here, 1, 2, 3 empties, and we do a blue here, 1, 2, 3 empties are left between, okay? So let's 1, 2, 3 empty, and then the next one we'll do yellow. So I'm gonna wet my brush, and I'm gonna bring it into my yellow. If you feel like it's still pretty thick, you can wet it again and bring it back in. This time, again, we're leaving 3 empties, and the 4th one here, we're painting yellow. So you're gonna try to move your brush around to nice and neatly block in. This triangle here. Okay, I'm gonna rinse my brush off and dry it off. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to put in my last primary color, which is blue. So I'm gonna leave 1, 2, 3 empties, and the 4th one here is gonna be blue. So I'm wetting my brush, and I'm loosening up my blue. One, 2, 3, 4.
So, ready to have some fun? So, I was thinking, why don't we start the aquarium? Oh my gosh. I say some more?
Okay, if you find that it's really globby, like you've got too much water and pigment on here and it's just moving around and it's not consistent, what you do is you just scoop it up, wipe it off. Scoop it up, wipe it off, okay? And then just kind of move around what's left to make a nice consistent. You got nice consistent coverage. You shouldn't be getting puddles, right? Not on watercolor paper. If you're getting puddles, then it's too wet. Then scoop some off and dry it up a bit. And just redistribute your pigment. Okay, so those are our 3 primary colors. We've got red, yellow, and blue. We've got 3 empty spots in between all of them. And I'm gonna pause now just so that you guys can catch up.